This is what an LGBT friend group looks like. I finished replaying Pokémon Ultra Moon recently. During the Sun and Moon era, I was going through some trials of my own called University to get that lovely little creative writing degree that helps me do all of this. Because I was more focused on school, I wasn't really as engaged with these games as I have for every other generation, meaning I'm admittedly a little lacking on the nooks and crannies of the lore of the Ultra Beasts or the Light Trio, but mostly Johnny and the Sprites over here. You're practically shoved right in front of Tapu Koko and told that this egg and their co-workers are some of the most important legendary Pokemon in the Alola region, so of course, I was interested to find out more about them in this playthrough. And, well, to TLDR the lore of the Tapu, on each of the islands of Alola, a Tapu looks after it, who represents an aspect of life. Tapu Koko on Mele Mele in the Ruins of Conflict, Tapu Lele on Akala in the Ruins of Life, Tapu Bulu on Ula Ula in the Ruins of Abundance, and Tapu Fini on Pony in the Ruins of Hope. The Guardian Deities are super protective of their land, and it's never really alluded to as to why they're so dutiful, but that's exactly what Captain Planet fought for, so who am I to debate with the Lost Blue Man? Anyway, at some point in history, Necrozma came to Alola and attempted to take its light away, absorbing it and leaking it out as Zenith Power, or Z-Power. This could be the first instance of the 4 Tapu protecting Alola in recorded history, but it's not confirmed. What we do know is that this is where Z-Power came from, and it started causing problems. The Tapu fought alongside young, hopeful people in Tapu Village with their newly found crystals bursting with Z-Power to return Necrozma from whence it came and bringing light back to the Alolan skies. Now, depending if you're basic or ultra, this is either where 2 emissaries of light, Solgaleo or Lunala, came to Alola, or are freed from inside of Necrozma, and go on to be revered by the ancient Alolan kings. They also fought the Tapu, because we've all been in unfamiliar places, we get it. After the Guardians put up a good fight, they got the respect of Solgaleo and Lunala, who created a bunch of Cosmog to live safely in Alola. They were to be raised by the Tapu as fellow Guardians of Alola, since they had to go back home. Super Nanny might have some words to say, as at some point armies were built on each of Alola's islands, with each under the rule of a king, and those armies were led by those very same colour-coordinated Tamagotchi. These wars abused the newly found Z-Power, and the Tapu decided this wasn't the position they were promised, so they will be handing in their 2 weeks' notice. They began to distance themselves from humanity. This is where the Tapu took it upon themselves to govern the Z-Power. Somehow, and they began to choose a person on each island who would be known as the Kahuna, an envoy and confidant. They taught the Kahuna how to forge Z-rings, harness Z-Power, and yeah, that's kind of it. Nobody here asks questions, really. I mean, I guess Tapu Bulu blew up Big Tesco on Tapu Village, but like, you don't learn about that. So all in all, I have just 2 major problems with the Tapu from a purely storytelling perspective. The first is that this timeline I had made for you because I'm so nice and handsome, I had to figure that out. Like, it's not hard, but still, you made me think, and don't do that, it's dangerous. The game itself doesn't actually put these events in any sort of timeline, and while sources like Bulbapedia place them in an order, it doesn't exactly make sense. We just don't know when the Necrozma invasion took place compared to the armies, but we definitely know that the Kahunas took place after both of those. I know we're working with 2 different versions of the same story here, but you're told these events kind of haphazardly as well throughout the story with no context, which really takes away from the idea that these are meant to be the events that Alola society, their culture, is built upon. When we as a player aren't given the opportunity to learn about this history, I can see why Sun and Moon gets misconstrued as just being about Lucamine's bad parenting, which, may I remind you, has nothing to do with the setting. Yes, I know in Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon she wants to protect Alola, and that's why she does all those things, but like, that's another video with a lot of other thoughts. My second complaint is that we don't actually get to know the Tapu all too well outside of their duties. Whether there's a reason for that, or just the fact that they're gods, I just think there's a lot of room to explore there. I might be coming off a little harsh, but when Alola's real-life counterpart and Polynesian culture deal with enough in the mainstream, I do think Game Freak dropped the ball. Not like from a cliff, maybe a moderately placed curb. So I'm gonna do what I do okayest, and write a story that helps give the Tapu specifically some more respect in line with their real-life counterparts. So let's read Before I get into the juicy stuff, the culture of Hawaii is historically passed down through mo'olelo, and it's basically how most legends have been passed down through the generations, whether through hula or word of mouth. As such, many stories have variations, so not all of my stories may sing from the same hymn sheet, but it's a pretty good song. Basically, I'll do my best to be diligent and give a nice well-rounded picture to see where the tapu came from and where I can take them. Hawaii totes a beautiful creation story called the Kumulipo. It's a chant that describes step by step how life came to the islands, the gods, and which one reigned over what. Do I think it's a little ridiculous that Pokemon didn't even attempt to interpret such a core part of the culture in any form? Maybe. Anyway, the Tapu are based loosely around the 4 major gods of the Polynesian pantheon. Tapu Koko as Ku, the god of war, Tapu Lele as Kane, god of life, Tapu Bulu as Lono, god of agriculture and medicine, and Tapu Fini as Kanaloa, god of the seas and the underworld. All 4 are part of a family of gods that would create more and more under the Polynesian pantheon to be revered and respected, with Kane and Kanaloa having the strongest ties to one another throughout their stories, as Kane created Kanaloa in an opposing pair-like situation. Kane would bring life, while Kanaloa would help souls pass onto the underworld. Lono and Ku, while regarded in their own right, have been cited to create the world alongside Kane, who saw it in darkness in the beginning. After light came, Ku and Lono helped shape and create life on Earth. Unfortunately, mankind wasn't all too grateful and started causing problems, so the gods hid themselves away and bestowed death to the people. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? It looks like the history we're given for the Alola region, and to an extent the Tapu, is an abridged telling of different events in Hawaiian culture. It's easy to see parallels like the significance of light to Necrozma's invasion, leading into the shame of the gods, which in turn leads players to the Kahuna system, which shares many similarities with the nobility of the Ali'i, where in ancient Hawaii, those who were believed to be descendants of the gods would become chief kings for the islands. Going back to the 4 major gods, Lono and Ku are somewhat counterparts of each other too. Together, they looked after the 2 seasons of ancient Hawaii, where rituals were undergone in reverence of Ku, and the peaceful months of harvest for Lono. This change would be brought in by the Pleiades stars at sunset. Today, this is an annual celebration called Makahiki, which isn't too dissimilar to the festival thrown for Tapu Koko at the start of the game. So now that we've got a better grasp on Hawaiian culture and what those wooden balls are, I think it's time to think about what direction I go. I really do think it's a shame that Pokemon hasn't actually talked about any sort of creation story for Alola. The game only explicitly says Alola was in darkness when light was already taken. So I think building on events before Necrozma's invasion would be best. And maybe building a more thorough relationship with the Tapu would be a good idea. I don't know. Let me know what you think, considering you're literally about to watch it. You're gonna watch it, right? Please, 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 please! It is impossible to know when our guardians came to be. We as a people were not yet born, and though we may feel the same feelings as our wild guides, we do not speak the same words. Our records have told us of the darkness and the rebirth of our sun and moon, but echoes in the wind have given us dreams of how the world once was, and to a select few, their tales painted beautiful tapestries. Those arts tell us of the seeds that were the first to grow upon our once whole island, tilled by the fervent wishes of the people yet to be. They sprouted, enveloped in sturdy cocoons. These plants would grow, and with them the fruits that would feed the land in tow. The first dawn came upon our island, and with it, these first plants would crack open with a force so grand it would split one into 4, creating our beloved islands, giving birth to our first gods. On our rosy island, where same-name flowers made their bed, the coral flutter would awaken to the cracks of eggs, the chirps of fawns. They would nurse the first young to their adulthood, would teach them the wisdom they would carry from the skies, to see them healed when their bodies bled, preparing them for the dangers they knew would come. On our Vermilion Island, where the lava trickled through a sea of ohia lehua. The burnt bull would take the scorched land that gave birth to our guardians, revitalizing it with a flourish of greens. They fed the land fruit and would see them survive the intense sunlight. The newborns would eat upon those flowers, rarely to be seen with the spirit, as they would retreat to their arid sanctuary for many moons after ferrying the gift of sustenance to and fro, high to low. On our golden island, blessed with fields full of ilima, would the bright rooster break the dawn and invigorate the wildlife with spirit to see the day through. They built their roost on a chasm's crag that boasted their own import. Where creatures would fear their authority, they would give credence to their audacity, yearning for the confidence they saw in them. On our lilac island, where the ocean dyes the mokihana a smoked purple hue, would the plumfish sing hopeful songs that brought bodiless souls to their new beginning. On nights where the beasts would cry for the deceased, their mists would bring a calm to their mourning, giving them only a glimpse to bring them peaceful nights. The 4 guardian spirits would see the first waves of life to our islands, from the start to the end. They knew no sadness from this inevitability, yet they also knew no joy from birth's gift. This was their duty. This was their sole role gifted upon them by their creator. The works tell of a discord sown by trespassers, those who would not question the importance of their authority, but sought to usurp it. These foreign invaders would seek to break the cycle crafted so delicately by the 4. The bright rooster would bat away intruders. The plumfish would send their boats upstream afar. The burnt bull would grow forests tall for cover. The coral flutter would heal wounds with their glistening scales. But one battle was fought too hard. The invaders had sharpened their weapons. They had concocted stronger poisons. The bright rooster brought their island's strongest, and would be the sole guardian of all in the stead of 4, who had to nurse not only their duties, but their islands on the brink of disrepair. With one fatal blow, they drew their final breath. The clatter of their wooden body had brought a complete halt to the battlefield. The gravity of their loss shook the islands with a rage that sought out each assailant in revenge. The rooster's color drained, pale. It was only when the burnt bull came that they gathered their siblings, and the first tears would fall down their faces. The plumfish sought to carry their body back to their nest on the Golden Island. The coral flutter brought the strongest youths from the Rose Island to ferry the weak across the ocean's breeze. The burnt bull awarded those who had avenged the rooster with the finest fruits, the least for those who had lost their god. When the sobbing siblings brought their kin to their resting place, they could not lay the body on their bed. For where the bright rooster had once made it, a seed had sprouted. The spirits inspected the stalk. They prodded at it. They gawked at it. They felt its manna seep from the soil. The fish sang their soulful song, bringing forth the mist to life's new path. The bull and flutter stayed silent in their respect, as the rooster they had lost would fade away. The pungent smell of sea salt wafted throughout the cavern, where the 3 spirits' first sorrows would be caressed by the bed of Ilima that began to bend as the sprouts basket. They sat still there for days. The crops went untended, the wilds left to fend, the souls wandered into the hills, the islands left alone. One dawn, the sprout's cocoon would crack into a familiar crest. The spirits awoke from their morning daze in awe of the light this child brought with it. The bright rooster, reborn. They brought with them knowledge and vigor once more, that like the young they were raising on the islands, they as deities were not immune to life's cycle. In fact, emboldened by it. The four left the nest and returned to the open skies, where they would see the islands not only to their own devices, but thriving. The flutter, who had cried for nights in this lonely cave, now saw the young had their parents to guide them. The bull, who had worked themselves to the need to rest for months at a time, would see the land tilled by the workers who admired their craft of trade. The fish, who held the burden of the sorrowful souls, saw their practices emulated by the devout, guiding the souls to each island's resting place, readying them for their new journeys. The rooster, born anew, knew peace, knowing that the wildlife could fend for themselves, as they have very much done in their stead. The four guardian spirits would go on to live their lives, with the knowledge that they could believe in their children, and the cycle of life could lead them to indulge, celebrate, experience. They knew now they were not beholden to their given duty. They are our teachers. They are our guides. They are us. However, no matter the change that a new wind would bring us, should a greater threat come to our shores to sow their discord and tyranny, our guardians would be well rested and at their strongest to protect with their lives. Hi, did you like this story? I just wanted to say I did actually like replaying Pokémon Ultra Moon. My only complaints were things I have with every Pokémon game, like actually having a strong narrative and better world building. As always, I'm just a guy with an internet connection, so if you're interested in learning more about anything I've talked about today, I've left some resources in the description to get you started. And you know what, if you're going that way anyway, you might as well throw in the comments any other Pokémon stories you'd like me to dive into. Make sure to subscribe to see if I get around to it, and maybe, just maybe, we can see each other again.